Alright, the issue here on the DQTV down to one second, tone, some little tone, and the chicken to similarly, Jangdor Jay, Yamlin Chabala, and Din Chabachin, who rests and Din Chabachin, Ludin Dian to million, which said that around the UDB me Ludin dear, and then that you raise, Tisande, and Twin Pusum Soba Santi, Ludin Chabachin, Din Delia, and Arzuki, Yamlan Caracina, to 2 years in the Chikanzuki, Dindi, and Chiki Moderace, Tangazu Ludindi. And just that Denigi Ludindilia, Din Chabachan, Sedelina, Momba in the Yangazu, and Chiki Din Denigi Kugores, Dineza, Di Tobiagi, and Tablam Harios, and Yukarasa Kugores, and Chisada, and Gudi Yangazu, and Kasore, Lunga issues in Yishu to be Sutum Sunyada, and the Sobokomia, Sunjusumia, and the Chike, or Jimbeniam Lenchea, and the Jimolan Jimamba, some child to Kugore, to Shigore, this some not did Jevaina, Juki, Yavachima in there, Tata Miko Topture, and Sedilina, Diki Yungure, and the Uncle Janshim Simbutone, Kulon Tiche, Yamlan Jebaina, and then Sanjoko want to be Q and Chagore, essay. That is Yamlan, the naked some of the Yana Yato Tangure, said the other, Shobe Tikor Mashura.
Good afternoon. So this morning, we looked at the fourth verse, which points out that, as we had heard previously, that in order to achieve our state of our desired state of happiness, we need to transform our way of thinking, change our mind through cultivating wholesome causes and eliminating unwholesome ways of thinking. But in order to do that, we require a specific basis, namely a precious human rebirth. And a precious human rebirth is characterized not merely by being born as a human being, but requires a number of other favorable circumstances. Those were mentioned this morning, and all of those we recognize we have attained. So we can therefore have the required basis to transform our mind and overcome suffering. Whilst that is the case, though, we also need to look beyond this life, to lives beyond this one, and ensure that we create the causes to have repeated good rebirths, life after life. So therefore, we need to accumulate the causes that will lead to future good rebirths. Those causes we looked at this morning too. The primary cause to attain rebirth in a higher realm is that of ethical restraint, and we spoke about what that is. And then in addition, to ensure that we have not just a good rebirth, but have all the required favorable circumstances, we need to cultivate the mind of generosity, minds of patience, and joyous perseverance. And those four coupled with prayer for a precious human rebirth. And moreover, in conclusion this morning, I mentioned that accumulating those four causes plus prayer with a motivation to achieve a good rebirth, the power of that motivation will lead to the attainment of that result. But if we engage in the cultivation of those same causes, but we have a far greater, more powerful motivation, a motivation to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, those same causes become a cause for Buddhahood. And then finally, I mentioned how that in order to radically transform our mind, which is what we endeavor to do to attain a state of lasting happiness, merely reflecting sporadically in the way that has been outlined is insufficient. One needs to do so repeatedly over a sustained period. And we mentioned this morning how to do so in terms of cultivating a motivation and keeping that alive and vibrant throughout one's day, and ensuring that it thereby guides our interactions with others. So this, in brief, is what we looked at this morning. Moving to the fifth verse, the mundane concerns of this present life, despite an unending struggle, remain unfinished when the enemy, the army of the Lord of Death, arrives. from now, ensure that you'll be without regret, Jampaldrak.
당한 저기 가르송 거라스네 세디게 자와 지딘베 자와라 안데 뉴균도 제장 배장 신찰매스도 차요 말해서 장안도 직 데려와 당한도 미로시네 기내 손도 충전 나지 아메야 수여지는 도스다 지게 라브라 친제 안디네게 직 로지 차유제 레가로 리고로 받아 근데 레가 리고 레가 저 세디 자와 세디 자와스데 세디 지딘이 자와라스데 세디게 다 세디기 디점기 동화세야 다 세디점기 안데 디기야게 디라 삼다장 저기 안데 지게 레가 세디다 직다 말아지 지고로 받아 세디 지자 세디 지딘 자와라서 지자 세디세 세디기 디기점나 세디기 동화세 디점 삼다제 먼저 레가데 쇼직다 먼저 미기네 소데 마시 바도 레가 리고래 제레다
The mundane concerns of this present life. This then refers to the various activities that keep us so occupied. From when we were born to, and shortly thereafter, we embarked on our process of education, thereafter engaged in contributing to society through the work we chose to go into. These and many other activities that keep us busy day and night, keep our mind occupied and thereby govern our speech and our physical behavior. These are the mundane concerns that are referred to. And these activities we engage in, as mentioned previously, they have as their goal largely the overcoming of problems that we encounter in this one life, and thereby trying to achieve happiness, pleasurable experiences, only though with a focus on this one life. This expression, mundane concerns of this present life, refers to these activities that keep us so preoccupied, but with a focus on only this one life.
그래서 저기 세디게 자와 기내 마시 봐도 안지기 레가레야 안송자야 따지게 구마고야가 레가레야 다 되네게 조금 제야 레가다 마다 수지고 받아 지산 되네게 레가 직 레제베 직시우지 지고레스 지산 디기 세디점기 펜바라마도 안지게 내 지고할 때 안세디기 디기 배 야구 주여지다 강아 차산 세투에 들리고 어서는 이 용거 말해시래 제가 세디를 양아 저 세디기 디점기 된다 대기 주변에 된다 내가 다 말아 레고래와 이내 가브레네 내가 디기인데 디기에 잡다 강아 뭐 요하지 강아 뭐 요야 배내 양아 저기 지게 소수기 세디 디기 주변에 동화세 소수기 지게 야고야 된다래야 미고 활다야 당 고소를 선체배네 디 제보들라 안 가려용고래 저기 안전강 줘야다 냐바시우트 쿠고야 강아제와지 제우드네 용고로 와다 지산데네 자당 저기 세디게 자와까지 간에 제베이네 지고할 때 이내야 안디기 띵기 대화세야디 주투야다 동안 세디게 동안 차산 세투야디 제투고 말레스 렌잔 세디게 지딩에 자와세야지 되는시라고 그러지래
This attitude, or this outlook, focused on just this one life, is a particularly narrow-minded approach. It's an approach that ignores our incredible potential. This focus on the mundane concerns, the mundane pleasures, and the mundane problems of this life, this way of thinking dominates us. And leads to all these activities, never-ending activities that dominate us so. And from this, yes, we experience some happiness, and sometimes we go through life, with greater periods of happiness. But these always pass. And when you look back over your life, when you've achieved great goals, the pleasure that has been achieved dissipates. And this happens continuously. And it can happen for such a variety of reasons. Sometimes we just wake up in a bad mood. Other times we meet someone and we have an unfortunate encounter and our happiness is lost. Sometimes we make wrong decisions and our whole life can go in a different trajectory. Other times, something unexpected may befall us. So in this way, when we look at our lives and we observe the world around us, we recognize that despite how busy we find ourselves, people do not achieve in this way happiness that lasts. And any happiness that is achieved quickly dissipates.
Dine zade chigor dine du gündu beyan sinsar mes na ge du na de lega de legor dine lega de che sayas ka mares chik jena ha chik de che wa chik de le ngure che san lega de che sayas ka ma da nga lega che sa son da lega che wa yo mares ne de ya da dine ka mer wa de che za dine se korwi gi di du gi 다 동안 세디기 디기 주비하기 체도 안 세디기 동안 세게 체도 레가데 제사요 말해서 그냥 안 저기들 와지가서 레가데 다 개회 퇴바지 연구를 돼 이나 다 레가레 수수기 최대 영향에 디기하는데 고마자 줘야 다 되는 게 내가 다 지금 담아라 저저 오르와데 칼라서야게 내가 디멤비다 지금 되는 게 돼야 되면은 지수볼은 얘기해서 네가 가서야 된다라 최대 고마자 줘야 돼 지금 담아라 저와 차고라 지산 사야기네요 마세 지상한 저 체디게 자와 내가 차야 되게 차에서는 세대 소소 시와다 념도 차야 되지 뒤년 받지마도 내를 차야스가요 말아와죠.
The mundane concerns of this present life, despite an unending struggle, remain unfinished. Here, I hardly need to point this out to you, because this is everyone's lived experience. Everyone here has a to-do list. That to-do list has yet to be completed. As we tick off 1 or 2 activities, 3 or 4 seem to get added on. And even when we are enjoying a pleasurable time, maybe out with our friends, we can hardly enjoy it because we know there's still more to be done, and our mind may be drawn to something else. And all too often, we live our life full of activity, looking forward to a holiday when I can finally relax, but we return from that exhausted. We hope that in one's retirement, then I can have a life of abundant pleasure, but this seems to be seldom experienced by anyone. So when we look at our life, we see, despite this, this activity, our busy minds, we never really experience happiness. And when we do, so quickly it passes. These activities never seem to end.
Natsik dinigi dandala kallagorasene, naanzugidu se samdadu, naanzuela karajigidu lamna, Cedizam yidi yutubiadan, Cedunga, Cedizam yudunga sayagi, Didanda Janya, leg legores. Cesandi lega de Gedina legorde, Nchik lega de negation, Sarsondanga, di yutubialia, and lega lego mare, and the Gangaseala, lega lego mares, and lega sayaskayo mares, Gedina lego gores. Cesan Cedizam yi, that dunga sayadan di yutubia, some lega leva digi, Cedizam yi, and the Gangasea, Yakose to Mebana. Jawa chimadam tarbiyo kopan se top toya kayo mares di chago mares dine inza dade nga zu lüdin kebarajan nga zu deji shobe shepa na din kebarajan kara ina drup toya gi din kebarajan samotaya gi kebarajan yodi kabla che di zam gi dunga se ya dan digi drubiya gi samlo matangwa che ane koyo dunga tada le zhoye che tabada tamje kemi goban toyage samdaje lega le gores je besu che gores samdang gores ane matale ane kewa chima lada mi goban toyage donda samdaje lega le gores je di male baine che di samja ya samdaje ji digi en nga jile digi tuya da ganga se de yong tu mare se ore.
Here, from our perspective of people looking to transform our minds, the way we should be approaching this is to look at our life, see how busy we have been throughout our life. What have we been busy with? All these activities, all these thoughts are focused on achieving the mere pleasures of this one life and overcoming the problems of this one life. Everything we do or say or think is motivated to achieve pleasure and to overcome problems of this one life. And despite being so busy making so many plans, have we yet achieved this? All the pleasures we have achieved have passed, and problems once again returned. The great loss is this precious human rebirth that we recognize we have achieved. Its potential remains unfulfilled. This great treasure we have hidden in our home, we have yet to utilize to achieve lasting happiness. What we need to do, and the purpose of this verse, is to look at our life and lift our gaze beyond the mere pleasures of this one life and look beyond this life. And not look merely to a future life, but beyond the realms of samsara, recognizing that freedom from this process, from this wheel of suffering, this is within our capacity to achieve. So here really what we're trying to do with these meditations in this section is to lift our gaze beyond this life, to see what our human potential really can lead to have freedom beyond what otherwise can be attained, freedom beyond samsara. This is possible for us. So here we strive to lift our gaze.
Tachidake Mabon Libi says that you make it temperature said there. Now to get Namune and Dra, Manzu Tahore, Labding Ansel, Nubeki, and Ansel, Gangati, and Ansel, Jiso, sort of uncertainty, the Nichi in Bena, Manzu Jawas, Leguru, what Hans Jawas, Ding on the Tahore said, Ding on the Cabdi Jawore said, Jawas said. Jezada, Tachida said, Chi on the Shiedi, that led and no more round me by Hidredi, Manzu Jawore said, Tachida said this word. Jezandi. Gidile never yomares, Chesade, Gidile in never yomar, Chesadile Sobana, that in Anzulia, Rahos yomar, she did she did lesson, Rahos and she made some there, Tara yomare, member Gazitine, Taya yomare, Lama Saye Gazine, got to yomares, Chesa, Jachida, Chiwi, Led and Yumu, Rakoche, Dusleo, she drew yes, Chesa Jachidagi, and Jachida. Mabon Libi says, the judge says, Mabon Nashin, Ma Nashin, Marchi, Mad Panileo do, Nangunajin, Madilia, Doegan, unto the Cabdiruchi, Patri Gorva, Jiji Mevana, and Madiles, Nangan show a tashi, but to Madi, me, Sanjata, the Carsinangas, Jigsaw, so to go at Duja, the Jigsura Yimbaro, Dinashi, and Jachida said, the Leon do. Manzuya, and Gitili never your mares, just not Deniji, Nimichi Leres, Sigurada. The Nigiliada, Malayan and Teji Kugures or that Teji Kugures.
The mundane concerns of this present life, despite an unending struggle, remain unfinished when their enemy, the army of the Lord of Death, arrives. This term, an enemy, we should understand it in a broader way. Generally, we use the term to refer to whatever causes us problems and difficulties in our life. So that would be something we would call an unwanted circumstance. We here would refer to it as an enemy. So it's in a broad sense, it refers to whatever brings us unwanted circumstances. But here, it's being used in a more poetic way. The enemy, the army of the Lord of Death. The army of the Lord of Death refers to our uncontrolled rebirth. What will, in other words, that when this life ends is something we don't have much control of, we don't have control over, nor where we will be reborn. And what this is not some external enemy, but it's actually the contaminated karma on our continuum that we have accumulated through our own afflictions. This is the enemy that leads to us taking uncontrolled death and uncontrolled rebirth, remaining though bound in the suffering realms of samsara. Therefore, relate to this though as poetry rather than thinking that there is some external Lord of Death. But just as in warfare, one does need to arm oneself, one does need to create a plan, and one does need to train. So the analogy works well here, especially when we understand the meaning is the true enemy are the afflictions on our continuum, as well as our karmic imprints, our negative karmic imprints. So we need to make a plan, arm ourselves through training, and in this way prepare. Because when our death will come is something we have no idea. How our death will come, in what manner, we also have no idea. And it's not something that we can prevent. There is no weapon, there is nothing we can buy to prevent our death. And even requesting great spiritual teachers, they cannot prevent our death coming. So therefore, we need to utilize whatever remains of this life to prepare for when our death does come. The verse ends with, from now ensure that you will be without regret, Jampo Drak. So again, Jampo Drak was a hard disciple to the author, Gendün Gyatso. Here he is being told, prepare now, don't delay, don't procrastinate. When you have no idea when death will come, you cannot say with any certainty whether it's just a few days or a few months or some years away. This is unknown. And if you do not utilize what remains well of your life, preparing for future rebirths, developing yourself spiritually, not fulfilling your potential, when death does come, you'll die with regret. You'll die with regret because this life's potential will not have been fulfilled.
Lunga yisuni yeje timbe surim yago songo kores surim de ne samlo dan du se ane yang du dan chin du sin de nyuba chimbo soya da ane jimbe nyamle che dongyu senba jang che dongyu sen sam jimbe dongbe sen ja ya ne soba komya ane jige zhenzhu zomya dige an jing de nege de molam ja ya dige de yusho she o du dinga bo di pa sosorarang gi dige ne di jangdur cheba ina Dene gyoba mares, jeza de shiwe ina, shiye de shidro na kayo mares. Shiwe ina ya, ko an jawa chimagi, jinga zo ten yabu, dadi tsedi ina, ten yabu tobyagi, gyusa sha sawa sa sha bayanza, an de gyoba chima dagaran gigires, milyu lada migo ma top tugures, jeza de kayo mares. Jeza da nga zo karires, dene gi kien gyudige yabu sawa ina, an debo de lada migo ma top tugures. Jang do spell ma so na kang ba ning ba ne pa kang ba ning ba cha ma di ru ji de ka bla di ben de ka la de ne de je kang ba sa ba na ju ba de ji ba de che de je sa de ju lu de de ning ba cha gang ji pa cha de ma shi du ru wa shi du de ne kang ba ning ba na zu de je kang ba sa ba na ju ba na xin dian mi lu dian yang ji ya bo shi la da mi ko ma dian ya bo to gu res je sa di gyo ba yo ma res gyöme 기식들 되네가 체대래야 다대가 주고 와 유비게 체디sam기 디기주베다 동아세가 삼로 마다와지 다라니 샘자 탐지 산조고 봐 토바지기 니던다랑이 아니 지기 류가 있으면 거네 잘한데 봐 지금에 샘베 삼로 kom야 다 소수기 류론제 계속 탐지 샘지야 권초를 추고 피기 샤야 땅이 샘베 삼다 두천 삼라 야네야도 다야 되는 제기 뇌버체다 되는게 지금에 파는 코로라 샘 추버데 자오기는 지금에 수수고 kom야 삼다야 다 계획이 냠는 샤야 되는게 계획 자와 냠는 샤야 배 야고래 십 가시 가랑라 지 준비지야 되네 마음반에야 아는 아디네게电상보 톱 레라마단지 되네게 안지게 Nyamlen Chia Go Yakurawa shows and Monam Java. On those Cheveneda, Manzu Gudi Pa, Jesare, Mal Masona, Mal Ledu, Pa, Jikabdoji, Jachidagi, Ma, the Suledu, Dela Kabdoji, and Azuki Jisawades, Jazan Tawanza, she saw Bene, Gyokinio Mares, Cousin, Yang had a Muko to Gris, Jazan, Company Bene, Kawasaba, the Burba Tiba.
What is the preparation that needs to be done then? Well, it's exactly as mentioned this morning. Training your mind in ethics, developing this outlook through the determination of, I will not bring harm, thereby restraining one's mind from either a dominance of self-interest or of thoughts of harm towards others. And this way, one also restrains one's speech and one's behavior. Secondly, training in generosity, the wish to give. Yeah, if one has an abundance, one shares this. And if one has skills and talents, certainly friendship, one shares this with others. Generating the wish to give of oneself to others, to share of oneself with others. And thirdly, that was the training in patience, to recognize that we will encounter difficulties, unwanted circumstances, people will interact with us in unwanted ways. That's okay. That's to be expected. I don't need to let that dominate my mind. Rather, if it's another person, see them as being valuable, and rather respond to them in a wise manner, in a gentle manner. And fourthly, that of joyous perseverance, recognizing where we are progressing well and take delight in that. And where we see we could have done better, recognize that now I know this, next time I will respond more skillfully and commit to continuing. And then lastly, that of prayer. So these 5 causes then are what we need to train our mind in. And to the extent we've trained our mind well in this way, when this life ends, we'll move from this body without regret. We won't look back on our life and think, I wish I'd lived my life differently. I wish I hadn't wasted quite so much time. Because the purpose of these meditations that we've looked at, certainly in this verse, but coupled with the previous verse, is firstly to recognize what we have achieved, secondly, to lift our gaze beyond this life, and thirdly, to bring about a sense of urgency, a sense that we need to utilize what remains well of this life because we don't know when it will end, and thereby overcome procrastination. What we're trying to do is lift our gaze from our current state of being dominated by achieving this life's pleasures and overcoming this life's problems, and rather to focus on the attainment of a goal of real value, to live our life thereby in a meaningful way, not overcome by mere pleasures and mere problems, all of which will pass. And in terms of how to relate to our death, for someone who has trained their mind well, when their death comes, they may, if they are in a position to see if their death comes in a way that they can see it approaching, they'll be relaxed about it. Even if their body is failing, and maybe even their mind is failing, they'll be relaxed about their approaching death, because they will know they've lived their life well, or at least the last period they've lived well. And in this way, they'll recognize that they've created the causes for good rebirth, and thereby they'll have confidence that a good rebirth is coming. And with that confidence, they'll recognize all that's happening is their consciousness is moving from this body and soon will arise in a new body. That new body will be without these aches and pains and feelings of illness. And this then, with the confidence that their next rebirth will be a good one, they will approach death with a relaxed mind and free from regret. But to do so, to have the confidence that when death comes, that we can, with ease, let go without regret. This comes about in dependence on us now, lifting our gaze from all these minor problems and concerns that dominate us so, and letting them go, seeing them in their true light, not allowing them to overwhelm us, but lifting our gaze to achieving goals beyond this life. And again, the trainings to focus our mind on are those of ethics, which comes about with a sincere determination. I will not harm anyone. I will not add to their burden of suffering. I will not add to their burden of pain. Rather than generosity, I will give of myself to others. I will engage with others in a way that only eases their burden of pain and suffering. I will be a source of joy in this world. And then thirdly, that of patience. And whatever I encounter, I will encounter hardships. Sometimes my own mind will be a bit dispirited, while I encounter others who are suffering in a manifest way. I will not allow myself to be overwhelmed by this. I will not allow myself to get caught up in this life's mundane pleasures and concerns, but rather keep my mind focused on achieving a goal of true value. So that's patience. And then fourthly, with mindfulness, I'll be aware of my progress. I'll take delight in all my successes, and where I don't live up to my expectations or I know I could do better, recognize this and set my mind on continuing to grow and develop. So in this way, we train ourselves to return to the analogy of the verse, like a soldier, developing our skills, developing our weapons and our armory, developing our skills so that whatever we encounter, whatever enemy, how well trained they may be, we can do so with confidence, knowing that we have prepared well.
mi shengi ne nga zu tsik tsuba ta namgyu dukje dya ta ko ha ta ya ji ne nga zu la kanga ji ro ba nga so su ne so su zu ne an ji mi shen ko ha ta ya zun xie ji ko ha ta ya an mi shen ge jia la ku ma ku ya ji ke ku ma ku ya la so ba ta de ne ge an ji ji ge ba na shen ya nu go ro ba nu yu de ne shen ya ji 강아 돼야다 되는지 제일 누구로 봐. 제가 추름 송세 류가 유스미에 샤라 내가 지금에 집에 송야 되게 되는 게 삼로 되게 대속이 내가 자산 가로 봐. 제가 당하는 지속이 나는 내가 지내기나 아니 지금 계시셔배나 계시 정보식으로 와다 정보식 미고홀마다 정보라샤 무연이 수디 시고래 시고래 추름 송이나 추름 직마송 바이나 아니 소수기 지게 튕긴주에 소수기 개반주에 되라 고하다야 작사시야게 닝아치 보러와 지산 추름 대식이 매스면 추름 송와이나 되네게 전 고하다야단 주인시에게 삼로디 가서 매반자 디식 말와 제자디 아니 구마쿠에 삼매 용 말아 제가 고소래서 용 말에 기시에베나 장부자샤 용 장부용 그래 아니 고소래서 용 말에 셀야 아니 자와다야다 투제다야다 되니게 셀야 뇌비게 자와디 류기원에 이거 말에 나비원에 이거 말에 제가 수름소한테 만주 지소나 레갈레도 갈로 수름소한테 빼마시기 예침모 쉬우차고와 예침모래 안디네 되지 쇼에 셰바나지한 서버고미야데 예침모래 제가 되네 장안들이야 코로나랑 조조 남사 코로나 조조다 안디니게 게임 막고 체교와 제가 되네 전예래네 고 쇼게는 가서 디링이 지행기 가르시나 될야 셈마투바제 소소를 파 코로나랑 메아 선배 삼로지 파 장토 주여바이나 디니게 게임이 직접제 셰야다 안지동은 넘규두제 통중 당외내 소수게 삼나려야 남상파 코로나야다 안지게 도시에 파 경제지역에 삼로디 리고 말이야. 제가 디네자 대성한 저기 니네 지소나랴 냠도 직제도 미세지기 나라 직 레갈리도 갑려야 배주 첨부여 되겐 판도 첨부차고 제가 주름송자다 저거 검사해야 되게.
A number of times I've encouraged you to train your mind in ethics, committing not to bring harm to others, no matter what circumstances you find yourself in. And this is imperative to do for the reasons that have been mentioned. But the reality is, those people that you'll encounter in society, not all of them are guided by a similar ethical approach. Sometimes you'll meet others who will lie to your face. You'll meet people who want to deceive you, to take advantage of you. You'll meet people who are angry and take it out on you. Or they may be full of pride and talk down to you. The training in ethics in societies such as ours is difficult but essential. It means that when we encounter such circumstances, this is when we need to rely on our training, the teachings we've heard and that we have integrated in our own daily meditations. So that when we do encounter people like this, we are aware of it, we recognize it, but we take responsibility for our own mind. We don't immediately respond by pointing a finger at them, but regard our own mind, recognizing that the quality of our own mind, that is our responsibility. So here we ensure that what arises within our mind is an ethical response. We can then respond to the person before us in a way that is honest and straightforward, in a way that doesn't inflame the situation, in a way that deals with the situation in a skillful manner. And to the extent that you have trained yourself, this will become you'll be ever more habituated to responding in this way. You will feel a sense of strength within you. You will not feel weak and oppressed by this person because you are in charge of your own mind. You are not responding in a way where you are out of control and later thinking, oh, I wish I'd said this or I wish I'd done that. Rather, your mind will stay calm and you'll be able to think clearly and respond skillfully. And in this way, deal with challenging circumstances in a way that is skillful. So in our society, where we encounter a variety of people every day, the trainings in ethics and patience are of great importance. To the extent that one develops an ethical outlook, one will naturally interact with others in a way that is honest and straightforward, and will not take advantage of others, not deceive others, not speak badly about others, and certainly not from a position of taking delight in looking at the faults of others. Rather, one will naturally have a warm feeling towards others, an affinity towards others. So training well in ethics and patience will ensure that minds such as frustration, annoyance, anger, these will not be close companions, even when we encounter challenging circumstances. So here I encourage you, in your meditations, to cultivate an ethical outlook, and as you develop that, also to meditate well on patience.
Adine, ni nganso sumye dunga de nga nyanggo chuna selame dermi ki de machibe ledi ba ponshe chembe ta asumre.
Moving to the next verse. If even I had to experience the sufferings of the three lower realms, I would find it unbearable. As you have no assurance of not being born there again, abandon non-virtuous karma, Jampaldrak. So I've just changed one word in the fourth line, action to the Sanskrit karma.
Ne nganso sum sire da nga juge kewa lensa le da nyomo bo wangi kewa lensa de la ne shi yung go re. Chesa ngandro sum da dendro se de shi che go re. Chesa dendro se de ngando la da mi go ba de dendro re ke de shi chikse. Anzo le da nyomo wangi shi ne ji ro du ya na ngaso sum se de nyawa ida ndundu ge ne sum che andi ngaso sum de che dendro la de la da mi go ba to ye ne de che chesa da nganzo da de nganzo shi ne kewa le de la le da nyomo mo wangi kewa le ba na da kawa kewa ling go na ya na ngaso la kewa ling go ya na dendro kewa ling go re che re chesa da dendro le kewa le ba na de shi nganzo gyu ga re sa go ne 지게 추름 소야도 서버 거면 디 추름 디레가 디시에게 규디게 사번에 덴돌을 끼고 그래. 데니게 규마사 바치베네 네 가와기 걸서 간송을 깨발린 게래제. 지 간송 깨발라는 간송들라 가와요세 냐와 이다 둔로심 디숨들 깨발린 거 그래제. 네 간소 숨 제산 깨발린 사기 덴돌을 맞게바이나 레다뉴모 왕 깨세디 가서 냐와 이다 dunro sumla ke gore je ni nga so sum se
When our death comes, is something we have no control over. Our karma will determine when this life ends. Moreover, where we are reborn, this is also something we have no control over. We cannot choose where we will be reborn. Our karma dictates where we will be reborn. There are only two directions we can take when death comes. We can either continue in the higher realms, as we are now, or fall into the lower realms. But whichever direction we take, it's not something we can decide on. Our karma will direct us. And if the most powerful imprint that on our continuum that ripens at the time of death is one that is virtuous, we will continue as we are in this life, in the higher realms, be reborn again as a human or even as a god. Or if it's a non-virtuous imprint that ripens at the time of death, that will send us to the lower realms and take rebirth either in the body of an animal or a spirit or in the hell realms. But this is something we do not have it's not a decision we can make when our death comes. But the strength of the karma on our continuum, or the karma on our continuum, is what will dictate where we take rebirth.
Dinegi, da ngaso sumna kewa lempa ina ngaso sumgi dunga de la sore dat dunga kanga de nga nyongo china suela me sidwe chisa nganzo gi dinegi ngaso sumgi dunga di de le da nyomo kewa lempa ngaso sumna kewa lempa ina da ngaso sumgi dunga di nyongo gores chisa di dunga di nyongo ina di dunga de la pe mase kanga chimbo ranga da lada mi dunga china sharage dunga mawa kanga chewa re sore chisa nga nyongwe chona suela me sida nga zikpe kanga shivu suya matuba kanga shivu nyongwa chagre chire.
As we know from our own lives and what we observe, humans certainly can experience tremendous suffering. But whatever suffering can be experienced in the human realm pales into significance when compared to the suffering of the lower realms, which is, when compared to the human existence, unbearable in comparison.
Jesa donda la nganzo le gari ratu jigore sene nganzo le da nyomo wangi shi jewa lensa de la jewa lensa ne sene shi yores nganzo sum se da dendro se shi yores. Jesa dendro le jeba na lada mi go ba toba na dele ya kanga dunga nyo yore de ine nga zuge namje de shu sheba na ja samlo ribu peje ta jen kanga se da de gi tu da tabla mangbu to ne jaragi ne jige ya yore chire ta nganso sum de le jewa inna denegi manzuge tablam duye de pe kale kha kore chesa dele ya dunga de shibu ma yore an dele dunga le jaga yore na lada mi dunga le pe dunga de nu shuk chewa an dele ya tabshi de na dunga se da tabshi de pe kombo che ma tu ba kanga ma yores chesa saji denis ni yores chesa de da de nga zu gawa du ye me de da de nga zu la ba yore che chesa nga zu gawa du ye me de la dendro de kigimbe ngaso sum dhokores ngaso sum rona saji dinde yore kanga dinde yores dendro le kebana dile dhaga yores dinde yores chesa dini di gaho dhone kewa chima sosora gaho damga che ukores chesa ngaso le gob yores da saji ni di kese josa ni di ngaso ya damga chi do sino mo che chi gore.
The karma on our continuum that determines where we will be reborn in our future rebirths. And if we were to fall in the lower realms, not only would the suffering be incomparable to what humans can experience, there is also the grave problem of, because of the strength of the overwhelming nature of the suffering in the lower realms, beings there are unable to identify the problems, come up with solutions, and implement those solutions. It's just not possible in the lower realms. One is stuck in situations where one suffers continuously and can do nothing about it. Whereas in our situation, as a human being in the higher realms, because we suffer but have great intelligence, we can recognize our suffering and we can think about its causes, come up with solutions, and implement those solutions. This can be likened to a superpower that we hold in our hands. We have this incredible intelligence, and we can utilize it to transform our trajectory of future lives by recognizing the causes which are virtuous and therefore will lead to good rebirths, and accumulating those, and recognize the causes which are non-virtuous and will lead to suffering, and avoid accumulating those. So therefore, in this life, we do have the capacity to accumulate causes that will ensure good rebirths in the future.
아니 야갑디베 코유숭디게 야고어레 아니 슝기 따도 야고어레 안지기 미디게 야고어레 안지 야갑디치요레 해야지 야갑신다 디나레 야갑딜 드로네 야갑지요레 딜 드로사치요레 딜 드로 야갑딜레 뇨타 서보 강아 모보 구마 망보 지지레 네바지야 다 마초다 강아 망고 네 디네기 튕기 메딩 슝기 따도 강아 망보요레 야갑딜레 강아 시우치요레 야갑디나레 베야고요레 해야지 야합니 되지. 다 경험 가와 두기나 다들 경험 남가 요레스. 지상 경험 가와 두는 야가 중기 따도 제서 야가 줬어 이번에 경험 제리 같이 왔으면 디 야합되어 줬어 디 유사다 텔야 넘도 지게다 데네 조가에게 줘서 디 경험 제리 제고레스. 디 세상 경험 제리 잡 중반에 경험도 디 줘고레스. 디 데는 직도에게 제리면은 디지부들 조고레스. 디지부들도 다 강아지네 요레스. 지상 결혼을 담가 요레스. 지상 다들 결혼기 가와 줘놔서 담가 타주시네 이더니 야가 들려가 저 강아 녀야 들려 되어 요마로 야가들 조고고 와서 지상 야가 줘서 결혼 딜이야 아니지 디 조에게 탑람디게 제고래 다진 제리 제고래 해야지 두신 원다로스 마서는 아주 두 스티거로 와 데니지네 야가들 조에게 차상 터지단 주고로 와다 지상 지게 민망부 잡죠 망부식 제가 야야 들려 내용을 받은 아주 차상 하고도 와드네 어디 비디나 시제 지상 사지 계서 조서 디 니요다 델나 강하요래 데니 딜레 야그레스 기와요래 디다가 요래서 지산 될 야가든 지산데 야가들 조고고래 지산 야가 조야기 탑람디 가르가르 고고에베데 델야 조야기 만주기 튕겐가로 디데지고래 사지 송고르다 되네.
If you imagine yourself in a situation where you have to leave where you are, you have no choice, you have to leave, and you have a choice of a destination. You don't have a choice about going, but you have a choice of destination. For the one, you don't need to do anything. You will just go there. The other requires a lot of preparation. But the one where you don't need to prepare and you can just travel there without impediment is pretty awful. It's a place that no one would want to go. There are just problems and difficulties there. The other place is quite wonderful, but it requires quite some preparation. Knowing that, but finding yourself in such a position, it's clear what choice you'll make. You'll put in the effort that is required right now to ensure that you can go somewhere that is peaceful and you can abide happily, as opposed to just continuing in a distracted way, but then knowing you're going to end up somewhere quite awful. So this is similar to the position we find ourselves in now, or now whilst we are in a position of having some choice.
제가 데르미게 대야 마시베스 데르미게스 나다데 안줄야 나 덴돌기기 탑람디 데리 지금 제 매바있나 먼저 안돌기기 말에서베 땡서요 말에서 안줄야 제가 데르미게 대야 마시베 안돌기기 말에서 베 안줄 땡서요 말에서 요 말에서래 숨바데 데르미게서 돼.
In the third line, as you have no assurance of not being born there again. In past lives, we certainly would have experienced the sufferings of the lower realms, but we are not there now. However, just merely not being there now gives us no assurance that we do not have such negative karmic imprints on our continuum that can still lead to rebirth there.
dine inza ta nga zu ge nga so ge na ga den dunga yong ma sa nga zu ka ho chu sa nga zu ji wa yu se di ya ga yu se zhuo ho re che se den zhuo zhuo ho re che sa den nga zhuo le ma zhuo ya ge ta blam ga re yo che ho re se ne di bo pong shi se re che sa di bo se de pong ho re di bo pong ba na do shuo ge wa se zhu yong re che sa do shuo ge ho zhu na ana nga zu la da mi go ba to to re che sa di bo pong wa na di bo de ge le de jing an zu ka sa 대시 쇼베 쇼바 가상 쇼바 나시 제부 간데시나 동아다 강소스나 유단 긴질에 되네 용고래 된저스나 유단 긴질에 되네 용고래 제가 유단 긴에도 와서 디버세데 레 디버사바나 디기 제부 가와기에서는 강소를 끼고래 제가 강소를 끼기 유디 디버데스 레 디버세 디버데 충와이나 둔돌게 딜레 차와이나 이다르게 딜레 베는 뉴베 차와나 냐와기야 용고래스 제가 디네상 나소숨을 게 유디 디버레스 디뽕고 그래 디메바서 그래 지데 디뽕샤바는 유디 메바서 샤바나 게요 말레스 제가 디보뽕고 그래스 디보뽕에도 가르스 뽕고스는 게와두고 그래스 게와두나 디보뽕고 그래스 제가 게와두고 그래스 제가 나소를 맞게 게기 디보뽕샤바나 아니 게와두고 그래 게와두비 제보디 가와서 덴저를 끼를 하다 미고 또 그래 제가 만족이 안돌을 맞게 탑람 덴절 하다 미고 탑람 안서 삼나 가르당 거라선 아주 삼내 디바 삼내 파뽕 아니 개베 삼내디 야 니보 공페 땅 거래 대이나 나서 끼기 말해스 제대 개와치마 덴절이 끼 두부래 해야지 언제 숨 거래
How then does one ensure that one does not fall into the lower realms but attains good rebirths? As mentioned yesterday, and we see here in the fourth line, abandon non-virtuous karma. This is the method. Refrain from non-virtue, and accompanying this, engage in the accumulation of virtue. In other words, strengthen our virtuous ways of thinking and weaken any habituations that we have to non-virtuous ways of thinking. And that was mentioned yesterday when we were looking at the views of Buddhism being dependence arising, dependence on causes. Every desired result comes about in dependence on the accumulation of its respective causes. Wanting to attain a good rebirth comes about in dependence on the accumulation of the respective causes. And not only that, the strength of the cause determines the strength of the outcome. A powerful virtuous cause is what is required to lead to a good rebirth. A powerful non-virtuous cause will lead to the lower realms. If it's a particularly powerful cause, it will lead to rebirth in the hells. If it's a middling non-virtue, it will lead to rebirth as a spirit, and a weaker non-virtue as an animal. Likewise, too, in terms of the strength of virtuous causes leading to rebirth as a human or as a god. So therefore, we determine here that to engage in the technique of abandoning non-virtuous ways of thinking and cultivating virtuous ways of thinking. And the purpose of this presentation here is to add strength to our determination to not merely strengthen our virtuous ways of thinking, but make them powerful and dominant within us.
Now, the deeper pongore said, "Get out to be a deeper said, Pending on the Samlonalia, Anjiki Shelia, Kondra Shelia, never chegi, Shelia, Tsevi, Sambashkev, and the Disamlodi, Divaro Chegore. That Dinigi Samlo Shelia, Tsevi, Sambi, Gunia, Lange, and Nanzo Nagoni, Pers Midilia, Gyunchu, Tsu Shevena, and the Antiba Nagi Diva Segore. That Shelia, Tsevi, Sambi, Gunia Lange, never give us some Gunia Lange, Nanzo Luju Gone, Shelia, Nidon Daya, Shangi, and the Chig, Jalakuma, Guala Soba Chevana, Deso, and Luki Kawata, Casamiga Chagor. She's not Disupango, Egere. She's not the Nigi, that Luki, Benangayo Gone, Jun Shea, and a Chig, Yu Shea, and the Shelia, Tsup Shea, and the Shevana, Tisungagi Tsu. Lü Gone and Shanlia, Shangu Kuma, Jala Kuma Kuya, Shanlia, Lü Gone, Shanlia, Tewachea, Denegi, Loyam La Soba Jevaina, and Zig Shangu So Jebala Soba Jevu and Jevana, Diva. Just Dio Guno Tele, Shanlia, Dube Saba Seves, Gunela, Dear Yi gave me Diva. Just that down Diva de la Nagi Diva, Luyi Diva, Yi Diva, Sumshaware. Just that Lugi Yi Diva said, Shanlia, Teve, Samba Shell, never ye, somebody Yi Diva Elegor. Dio Gune Lange, I gone, Tixupshada, and Shanlia Gunje Sheba, Tixeba de Tiso, and Nagi Diva Resor. The nation Nube Saba Dio Gune Lange, Luyu Gune, Shanye, Jalago, and Shanlia, Jig, never ye, Tewacheba, Luyu, Shan, Sochabala, Shannon, you don't die a lot of Jebana. Lui Migavarege, Desopongo Gorege, Desopongo Gorege. Just a disappointed, Canis Pongores, Degishe, Luma Yusum, Shalla, Tawajig, Mess, and be some detange, some digica gorda, this some cow, just that Luma Yusum Yeju to Mutsumichi, Nugijig Mess, and big some detandu, Luma used me deeper the Pongore. Ponza de and the Carsors. Nason Kieg, Gudisago Mar, not Chago Mareje. Cisada, you is Nieju to be Trum Sunyadu, Digi, and the girls of Kiavachi Malana Migo Togore, yes, that was Dorduro Shuna and Ditri.
An illustration of non-virtue is the mind of anger. Merely having the mind of anger dominant, this is non-virtuous. And then this can't be expressed through our speech, where we shout at others, speak to them in a harsh manner, or expressed physically through physical conflict or stealing from others. This is what we need to abandon. The way to abandon non-virtue is to change our mind, transform our mind, developing the determination, I will not harm others. I will not harm others through my physical conduct, my way of communicating, and recognizing that this comes from a way of thinking. This is what I'll take control of, my own mind. I will ensure that my mind is not in the direction of harming others, because if it is, I will end up lying to others, speaking to others in a harsh manner or divisively. Or my physical behavior may be harmful, such as stealing from others or engaging in physical conflict or sexual misconduct. All of this comes from non-virtuous ways of thinking. This is what I will abandon. And the way to abandon non-virtuous ways of thinking is to cultivate, to strengthen our habituation to virtuous ways of thinking. The more habituated we are to virtuous ways of thinking, proportionately, non-virtuous ways of thinking will weaken. And in this way, as we strengthen our virtuous ways of thinking, we are accumulating causes that lead to good rebirths, and we are turning away from accumulating causes that would otherwise lead to rebirth in the lower realms. So there's this relationship between the two. As we strengthen our habituation to virtuous ways of thinking, not only then does our physical behavior and our speech follow on by being virtuous, but we ever less think in a non-virtuous way and therefore act in a non-virtuous way, and therefore the causes we accumulate are primarily virtuous.
Jamba come shalia, Digi Casore, Digi Juna, Sembege, Shenlia, Deva Juna, Sembe, Samno Digi, Chiki Samno Tide, Jere, and Shen, Semjan Tamje Dunga, Jana, Sembe, Samno Tide, Gaware, Tisungas, Yana, and some Tangore, Tangorva. Is that dinner that the doors in Samno dia doors in the Jangi to the Samlia, Nuba Church, dinner Gazam Julia. Shen yu dunga tamche nge se yi, shen yi kanga tamche nge se ta, shen yi le digi nge drup tupu do chigi sebe samlo taya. Tene ke samtawe che la, 안디 니 심전 탐지기 산동하세야 디규트비에 된다라 니 산주고바 토보도 지상에 심전 탐지기 된 산주고바 토버 지긴 새벽에 삼나다야 디차상 개와래 다 지소 개와 배마세비 또 침부를 해서 올다디
Thus far I've mentioned a number of virtuous minds to cultivate, primarily ethical restraint as well as generosity, patience and joyous perseverance. And these are crucially important. There's another section or group of virtuous minds to cultivate, such as love and compassion. The mind of love is the sincere wish, may others be happy. And the mind of compassion, so the mind of love is may all beings be happy. And the mind of compassion, may all beings be freed of suffering. So these two are virtuous minds, and they come from a feeling of closeness towards all others. Here we are building on the minds that we have cultivated thus far. Thus far we have lifted our mind, trying to lift our mind to first recognize what we have achieved with this precious human rebirth, and then trying to lift our mind beyond the mundane concerns of this life, to look for goals beyond this life. Now, we're lifting our mind further, broadening our vision beyond achieving our own happiness and overcome our own suffering, to recognizing the situation others find themselves in too, and generating the thought, the welfare of others is my responsibility. Where I can, I will help others experience more happiness. Where I can, I'll help others overcome problems and suffering. So here we are broadening our mind, taking our concern beyond ourselves, but to all people. So this is these are incredibly powerful virtuous minds to cultivate.
안디스 샤사 데니기 안에지게 아주기 좀 소야다 소보고며 좀 해야 되게 안지자 상유 좀 내디게 도나마 송샤 요레스 제가 데니게 상유 좀 내디게 송샤 되게 가상한 저게 지게 되게 방도에네 시인세지 생활하자 제가 지차사 도나마 상유 송샤 상유 좀 내디게 상유 좀 내 그런 게 녀마게 제바제 냠뇨제 데니시는 냠뇨사데 냠뇨무 토네 마즈레 판도 여바디 산이좀데기 두시고레 송샤요레스 제자 되는 송바디 겨와게는 제서 그런기 안바 즉 퇴삼제 냠렌제 안딩 안솔야 두수제 샤세데 안솔야 오저시 두시는 안솔 에 지구인이 수디레 샤세데 안솔야 즉 라체 셰셰 랍체로 난거와
These virtuous minds of ethical restraint, generosity, patience, love and compassion, these were all originally taught by Buddha Shakyamuni. And he taught from his own experience. So these teachings are called the sutras, the actual teachings from the Buddha, and referred to in the second verse. And Buddha taught from his own experience. And then great masters who followed in subsequent lives encountered these teachings, cultivated them within themselves, and in this way became great masters in that they had given rise to similar realizations and taught it to their students. So here we are encountering these teachings from Gendün Gyatso, who is teaching faithfully the same teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni. And so here, with this unbroken lineage of teachings from Buddha Shakyamuni through great masters like Gendün Gyatso to our present day, we now have the opportunity to encounter.
이제 당하고 저기 제일용의 예수님 예주 자오기는 지금의 세배 삼다에 나ዞ래 야네 야도로 코르투고 말하는 거 가서 나zo 검시로 신예만의 검시 야고 매반사 마중에 자디 야고지 예두고 말와 그래서 다두스 삼다네 직고 뒤즈지 망부 고야지 메디게 제깔레시데 메딘지도 와다가 삼다야지마도 제고 류나게 슈갸와 스카요 말와 는 조선 땅야고 땅고야 스카요 말아데 르르라 제제 직자라 또 거기를 둥둥이시나 어다디링에 류나 26년에 직샤래 녀바치 사오있는 지면 선배기 삼로다야 치르도 와다 Jisa samlo di tangne dusya tangne di kanga jit mewa chire di ina nga zu yangsi ko matu di kogu mewa di karsan nyaman dusya ni jik dine sam tangya go gomshiro mewa za jengyo marwa da jendu go. Jisa dine ke tanga dusya na samlo charchi da, ni da, sum da, dine gedi na dine dusya na, ane gedi na samlo ode dine shi jigme ha sambe yangsi samlo koro dugen chegoro ba, di gogo ra nga zole. Jisa dine zang 저기 동의 셈바 검야다 대시 개와 주야게 삼다데 제자 되네게 삼다데 저기 다음에 뒤수 통로 지나려야 가마 징아스나 직제베네다 어두스네 렐레테즈나다 일lunga 있으면 샤라 내가 싸우기는 지금에 삼배 삼마다 다 랑기 안지게 가리토네나 샹리아 즉 최고부야다 샹리아 진바다 등이 뜻 로버지에 지기야 삼배 삼다데 이게 아주 즉 두스는 삼다베나 뒤주 고야메디게 지그리 인주 즉 되네 인장도 두체 차지 다니다 양 지숨다네 양시 다베네 게디나다 삼레 양시 코르디가 소르지게 아니 인니가 가zam질이야 게디나 지삼노디 코르디가 소주 연구해서 와다 제산된 안쪽에 장도를 제야 돼 제산다 저기 삼로디 얇게 땅고래 계획이 팽하게 삼로디 얇게 땅고래 해야 돼 디 젠다 고 주게 디와바 제저 접제 야게 다스카야마 칼라산에 야게 다스카야마 다 삼로디 야네 다도 고 야게 주고 니버디 삼로야 남사 셈리아 쟁이데 니버디 슉처셔셔 주고라 삼로 슉처셔 주고 제자데 야게 다야세데 야네 삼다야지다 근데 델레 김제 삼다야레 디제나 판도 가려요. 디 마제나 가려 연구도 세비 김제 삼다. 니게 판도 예비 제부도 통네. 통반에 델레 양아서 야네야도 삼다야게 개발 연구를 제가 되네게 삼노디 두시는 삼나 땅고 그래. 제데디 야네양도 다야네양 땅. 디네 삼로디 공 누버 처리서 주고리스. 제가 되네 장 아주 디유튜브에 탈람디리에 직다 동화세에게 탑람디 소리 삼노도 땅고 그래. 삼노 디네 땅에 토네 디유튜브에다 동화세에 두시고 그래. 송송거와
The way all great masters trained from Buddha Shakyamuni right to the present day is through gathering knowledge and integrating it within themselves. And to do so, what is crucial is to engage in this process repeatedly over a sustained period. Because what we are trying to do is become habituated to a virtuous, wholesome way of thinking and break our habituation to unwholesome ways of thinking. Our own minds are our own responsibility, and each of us, we know our own mind better than others can. Your task is to look at your mind, see what your habituations, where your habituations are stronger. When you encounter certain circumstances, how do you habitually respond? What naturally arises within you? From that, you can see what your imprints are from past lives, from this life. There you can recognize where are the areas you need to focus on to strengthen the good qualities you have, and other areas you need to focus on to weaken unwholesome habituations that you may have. The way to do so is, of course, in formal meditation like you're doing here, and hopefully like you do daily at home. But don't leave your training only on the meditation cushion. If you are serious about changing your mind, you need to do much more than just formal meditation practice. It needs to become your habituated way of thinking. So this means you have your daily meditation, but then you also recall what you've meditated throughout the day. So when you've got a few minutes, either making a coffee at home or when you're sitting quietly drinking it, no need then to distract yourself by watching or engaging with something of no real importance. Take those few minutes and go inside and look at your mind. And then remind yourself of the teachings. Remind yourself of what you meditated on that morning. Think to yourself, I will not harm others. I do not want to be the kind of person who talks badly about others or who engages easily in conflict with others. This is not who I want to be. Because when my mind is like that, I know I am unhappy. I can feel that I am suffering. And I also know that I'm causing others to suffer. I'm adding to their own burden of difficulties. I do not want to be that kind of person. And then recall situations, perhaps earlier that day or the previous day, where you did respond in such a way. And then think to yourself, what would have been a more skillful way of responding? And in this way, role play. And think, so when I encounter a similar situation in the future, how can I respond more skillfully? And similarly, where you did encounter a difficult situation and you did respond skillfully, recognize that, rejoice in that, and reaffirm that that was a good way to respond. And when I encounter a similar situation, I will respond in a similar way again, and strengthen your habituation. So this thinking you can do whilst making the coffee, while enjoying the coffee. It doesn't only have to be done on the cushion. So when approaching meditation like this, where you do a formal practice, but you take this way of thinking and you repeat it in brief moments throughout the day, this brings on rapid transformation. This is how one builds habits. So this is presented in society, it's nothing radical, but this is how one changes one's mind. And the illustration I gave there was to do with ethics, but so too with generosity. When one thinks about the person I want to be is someone who is ethical, who does not respond in a way that is non-virtuous, but actually I want to give of myself. I want to ease the suffering of others. I want to naturally be there for them in any way that I can. And here I think about the benefits that will come to yourself and others from being a generous person, a person who gives of themselves, as well as an ethical person, a person who refrains from bringing any harm. Thinking about this again and again, one's mind will become relaxed and spacious. Problems will not be experienced as such. Difficulties will not be experienced as such. And one's mind will stay relaxed, open, and spacious. And this way, one will experience more happiness and experience ever fewer problems and difficulties. This then is a skillful way to train your mind.
나디네 자나 저기 진비 냠는 듯이 진바사디 냠는 제거라사디 당 저기 디네게 털이야 진비 냠는 제야야 아직 배제 망부용어래 집에는 사생의 진바사야당 아니 미치비 진바사야당 안지걸 가서래 안에 취기 진바사야디 용거래 지산 사생의 진바라면 아 저기 칼라당 두로다 디네 튀에 현랴 니 최고 부야다 대들이야 사생의 진바차고래 지산 당 저기 최고 부야로 삼다면에 아 저기 쇼샤다 칼라기디 사비네 칼라사야디 삼보 마사니리야 아니야 상계당 권주 제 듄리야 상초주기와 세나 제벌 푸에 삼비게 샘장 탐지게 도나 상교고 토고우도마 상교고 토버쇼 디드는 상교고 토비게 된다라야 니 칼라디야 권주를 푸에 삼비게 되네게 삼나지 삼나다 되는 안 사회네 제사 데 칼라디 푸에네 메와 제거 말다 되니게 푸비게 샘장 탐지게 등의 상교고 토버쇼 삼비게 삼로디 개와빼 자주 샘냠네 상교고 토비 규체고 디인자 디던달랭이 안데 칼라스티 야 권출을 푸유 선배 삼다번에 데디 진바레 동의 선바 삼나 레버레 제디 칼라데 야 푸고래 진짜 디소의 진바레 진배 냠레레 두 삼다야데 당아도 냠레 제데 삼노 나로 고고라데 삼노 당당이 되네 아 저기 삼노 유와 당당이도 내 시고로 순고로와 진짜 남미가 저 칼라세데 소소 어다 지신부 서서서마도 야 푸에게 되네 지고 말아 진짜 다 냠는 지도 같이 시고로서 삼노 유와 간스 당고라나 소소에 삼는 게 심지어 탐지 상요고 뭐 토고쇼 디던달 양의 칼라디야 권출을 푸기 선비게 눈치네 매바체체 두체 삼단에 디 삼노디 진바리 진배 냠레레 진짜 디게 와사고래 되네치나 답람 지경으로 디멘비가 당한 속에 칼라 닝바 다지 신도를 리스나서 사말라바티 바 유로와 유디급이야 안지게 되네게 삼로 갔던 거라시네 다심지야 탐지게 산조 보고 토버시 디던달라 디스마 아니 무슨 디길 봐 진바이 있습니다. 디스 봐 부위 사로 그래 세상 부디게 칼라세 조도야 팽기를 불이야 지기에 선비게 샘절에 봐 지기에 선비 진바이 있습니다. 두 스텝에 삼다제 봐샤베나 아니 봐 유고 지고 때 유셔보면 지기로 봐서 책으로 봐 진짜 디스의 진비냐면 개와 차고 가서 공론 삼로 나라 나 산주 고방 토거쇼 디인장이 디 칼라디 마 사디 심전에 무슨 디길 봐 지기에 선비 컨트롤이야 안지 거도 조도야라 팽기를 컨트롤 팽기를 했으면 컨트롤 판주치도 지긴 선비 삼로시고 봐 디 삼로디 진비냐면 개와래 두스네 개와래 안디네 상가족에 수부 나라바 무슨 배 망부여 봐다 대세나 로단 줄든 초고 가서 칼라마사나 가서 수부나 무슨 디게 시르고 와 세상나 칼라세디게 비야 니 리브나리아 수부나라 무슨 배마 정례대 버지요래 세상 대세이네 디기 고고 동하고 고고 디기 고고래 세상 디네 예상 미 칼라세 디바지 콘솔이야 안지 콘솔 파제시 콘솔이야 디기여다 안디니실이 디기여 선배 삼다 사번 디수의 진비냠는 저거 안디니 기한 중에 사생이 진비냠는 다 미지비냠는 세대 안정은 무슨 도도 추나 사되바다 디니 기한도 소교야게 다 셈제 직시한다에 소 년가요 바디 소교비야기 소교바나 미지비 진바 베네 대체 셈제 샹다 디면비다 총총 무신도지나 람가디와다 시야다 추나사 주 된바인 된저고 체제 닝제 선배고 바교바인 저서네 미지비진 바차고래 가서 미지비지 지보고 지벌을 교고로 안도스네 다 소수기 취기 진바라도 소수기 취지게 냠는데지 냠는 제다지나 하고 같이 대소의 현례 폐배습니다 랍지 겹지 컨트롤이야 냠는 제주반 컨트롤의 핑거로 지자 디니자 취기 진바세 디니기 진배 냠는 제다 지금 먹는 걸로
The practice of generosity is traditionally presented with three divisions: material generosity, generosity of giving fearlessness, and generosity of giving the Dharma. Material generosity is the one that we would be most familiar with: giving of food, giving of clothing, making offerings, and so forth. And all of these are about training the mind, developing the wish to give. All of us, we eat 2 or 3 meals a day. Before eating your meal, it's the traditional way in the Buddhist world is to offer your meal to the 3 jewels. So here, I'd encourage you to do this, especially if you have some of your meals alone. Just take a few moments, offer with sincerity your meal to the 3 jewels, visualizing yourself being in their presence, offering what you are about to enjoy to them first, and with the thought that through the merit of offering this meal to the Buddhas, may I, with this merit, lead all beings to attain their own enlightenment, to attain a state freed of suffering. Remind yourself that the purpose of eating this meal is to sustain our body, sustain this precious human rebirth, so that we can continue to train our mind and develop ourselves to give ever more to others, to give of ourselves ever more to others. And in this way, we've now made an offering, and we've also, in a sense, transformed our relationship to the meal we are about to enjoy, recognizing its true purpose. And now we can eat and enjoy the meal. And yeah, we have engaged in a practice of generosity. We've offered our meal. We haven't actually given anything away, and now we eat it and enjoy it. But we've strengthened the mind of giving. And as one continues to do this, one will become ever more habituated to the thought of giving of oneself in any way to others when there is a need. And when you'll find that when you have some food left over, perhaps now you'll give it directly to insects. They will have a feast. You will generate joy in your mind, knowing that they have overcome suffering. This is something far nicer than just throwing it in the bin. And as one develops and opens oneself to others, merely giving some food to insects, one will not just be doing so thinking, well, may they have a nice day, may their life go well, but one will develop an ever broader motivation. May I be able to fulfill the needs of all beings. May I be able to fulfill both their temporary needs, such as feeding the hungry, but may I in particular be able to fulfill the ultimate needs of beings by leading them to enlightenment. So yeah, one is still now giving food to insects, but one is doing so with a much more powerful motivation. And moreover, when one is eating and enjoying the food, one can imagine that there may be beings living in one's body that take sustenance from this food. And here one imagines that they are being sustained. The whole process of offering food in this way is about going through our normal activities, but with a far broader outlook, not just about myself and enjoyment and pleasure and being dominated by the mundane concerns of this present life, but lifting our gaze and having a far broader outlook beyond this one life and beyond just ourselves. As we train ourselves like this ever more, it becomes easier and easier to give of ourselves to others. The second type of giving is that of fearlessness. Fearlessness refers to helping those whose life is in grave danger, so their mind is dominated by fear, thinking they may die. So how we may encounter such beings in our life would usually be if we walk past a pond, just have a look, see if there are insects who were trying to have something to drink, but perhaps their wings got wet and now they are in danger of drowning, and rescue them. Or if you're walking, just walk with care, so that you don't crush any insects. Or when driving, watch out for the birds who who land on or who are on the road in front of the car. Recognizing that all beings value their life and relate to them with gentleness and with care and value their lives. The third type of giving is that of giving the Dharma. And here we don't need to take this just as teaching the Dharma, but to the people in your orbit, your friends, your family, your work colleagues, when they are in distress and you notice so, ask them about it. And if they are receptive to your advice, give it to them. And in this way, one gives of the Dharma. And if they're not receptive to your advice, just give of yourself and be a listening friend. Hear what they have to say. Just that can ease their suffering. And in every way that we can ease the suffering of others, do so. And this training of generosity is the training in developing the wish to give of ourselves to others so as to ease their burden.
안디네게 내가 저기 개와라고 소소라나게 되네게 다 수름소야다 저보고미야 전에 되네게 진비 냠는 제제 네 개와사샤바디게 다 개와디야 소소 개와디야 땅에 샘전 탐지 디기 요에 돈달이야 샘전 탐지기 디 대와디 디기 디위 대부디 안에 네 개와사샤베 개위 대부 디기디 샘전 탐지를 민버쇼 샘전 탐지 용어쇼 샘베게 샘전 탐지를 펜비게 용어쇼 샘베게 다디 네 개와 강사바디야 샘전 되지 디기 용어에 규규와쇼 샘베 시할려 뭐바이나 당한주게 개와디 매반 책고 말듯이 개와 빠투메 바사기래지 제가 되는자 마주기 제가 소수기 시엔디게 나이 셈바상베 팔지를 펜베치들 라비아나 소수기 40배 개와지 시엔유도는 거야 두시네 삼다베나 대수 진변님의 최고래서 제가 당원서 오아래서 그래 진변님의 최고래 대수
Another skillful way to practice generosity is whenever we engage in virtuous acts, whether of generosity, whether of ethical restraint or patience, or generate minds of love and compassion, whatever they may be, we know we have accumulated virtue. We've spoken about how virtue is the cause that leads to happiness. Here, don't just then dedicate that virtue, that may I achieve a good rebirth, may I achieve my own enlightenment, rather dedicate it so that may all sentient beings achieve enlightenment, may all sentient beings achieve only good rebirths as they progress towards enlightenment. Because dedicating the virtue in this way serves many purposes. So when we dedicate to all sentient beings, we do include ourselves as well, being one of all sentient beings. Moreover, the virtue that we give, it can, by expressing this wish for it to ripen on the continuum of others, this expands our mind ever further to wanting, as an expression of, may everything I do, directly and indirectly, bring benefit to others. We may express this as we dedicate, in the same way that I have done virtuous deeds. May all beings interact with others in virtuous ways. In the same way as I help someone now, or practice generosity or ethics now, may all beings interact with each other in this way. In this way, may all beings live in harmony together. May all beings only act in beneficial ways towards each other. And in this way, may all beings accumulate causes that lead only to enlightenment. And this then is a far more skillful way to dedicate our virtue.
다들 자당한테 디링기 럽센디게 도시대 당한테 삼로 규와 당하게 삼로 당한 두신 대시셰바 나신 대시셰바디게 두신 삼로디게 야네 야도 당고리에서 도시네 당한테 삼로 당다 림바지마 시스템이 장도를 지어야 림바데 디송고래 데네셰바라 데네가도 디기 주야다 동아세야디 줍투고리에서지 노투고리에서 데 디링한테 럽센데 데시나 상이된 마음부터 쉬야지.
We then continue today, as we started yesterday, to look at how we can transform our mind, to develop our way of thinking, to become the kind of person we long to be. And this all comes down to training our mind. So we spoke today about how to develop virtuous minds and how to do so skillfully throughout the day. Then tomorrow we'll continue with the next verse, continuing again to look at how to transform our mind.
디월에나 상이 제시하는 디월 상이 모두 디와 다에 경스 디와 도거로지 디레삼도 다지 도거로 쉬거는 상이 디와 다에 디시죠.
So thank you. We'll finish there for now. If you have some questions, then there'll be time for that tomorrow. So thank you very much.